we do this, who is the we? And I suspect within that answer, I might find an answer to another question, that is, who actually appoints the co-designers after your process of getting nominations?
So we and us in terms of who's we that's implementing co-design.
Yeah, who is running this process? Who is choosing? You use we a lot.
Okay, thank you for that question, Councilmember Wall. So it would depend on the project. Um, Initially, very much in the beginning, DMC City of Rochester were the two entities that piloted co-design, so to speak, which is why Jones Plan and Counterpart, File Khalifa, and Jess Roberts is online, who is a consultant that worked with us on that. But as we move forward and this has grown, there'll be changes. So each co-design project has a project, right? So it might be whoever is assigned to that project. It might be myself, it might be Pat, it might be Zach, it can be a different organization like external work. Like this one, Jo Marie was the person who's part of that, but she's not alone in it. She would have other folks who are part of that project team. And the other times, that we have to do different things, sometimes it's sitting in a space. So during every conversation, there will be a couple of people who are listening and taking notes. But in terms of who appoint or select for designers, it would be the project team that is doing that. So then we begin with that process of talking about identifying the persona and stakeholders, and then having preliminary conversations with folks that are connected to within the community. And typically we're going to grassroots organizations, so we're looking for folks in the community who don't already have access to spaces like this. And having those conversations with them and asking them if they were served, do they have any interest in the project, and that project team makes that determination.
And I presume that's a city project team.
Not always.
Not always.
Not always. If it's a city project, then we would have some city teammates, but a lot of times it's a city DMC project, and so we'll have folks from City of Rochester as well as Destination Medical Center. If it is a different entity, then their project team would be composed of people from their own organizations or whoever they're partnering with on that particular project. The reason we participated in the Michael Hawaship one was because we're part of a coalition. And so both Papa and I were able to participate in that part of the project team.
How would a person totally unattached to an organization or a school apply for a position on the co-design team?
We don't have folks apply to be co-designers. It's through outreach and trusted networks. But we the project team, all group of people will reach out to them. So there isn't an application process. What we found is having an application process is actually a barrier because again, then you're getting people who have access to be able to fill out an application. Sometimes that removes a whole lot of people, right, from the opportunity to be able to participate. So it's actually very intentional outreach from us and folks in our networks who then connect to their own networks within whichever community we've identified to reach those co-designers.
I would think it could include people too. It would be one more avenue to surface someone who just saw an announcement at the public library or something. Well, I'd really be interested in 6th Street Bridge or something like that. It might expand the opportunities. How would the city council or the community come to know the influence of the co-designers on a specific project? That is, I used one specific example, the heated sidewalks. How could we commend the co-design process by better understanding how it is that their work is influential in the design process?
Thank you for the question, Councilor, because you reminded me of something I didn't mention, so I appreciate it. We do have a repository of all of the case studies, quote unquote, or summary documents of each co-design project on the DMC page. And I was informed today that it'd be really wonderful if we had a duplicate of that on the city page. So I will share that information and we'll work on figuring out how to get that included in the city page as well. You'll be able to go and see all the projects that have been completed, as well as a summary document for each of those. The other thing I will mention is, in full transparency, is we have had moments where we have shared information on co-designers, their pictures, their video, etc. And those pictures and video have been taken and used to give them a really difficult time, right? And so we're trying to be really conscious about how much exposure do we give to co-designers, who we're telling them, you're coming to a really trusted space. We're going to be careful and caring of you and your community and your identity. But then if we put it out in public, sometimes that information is used in a way that's not very positive, which is the opposite of what you're asking. So finding a good balance of how do we provide a summary report and be transparent in that way, which we would love to do, but at the same time making sure that we're caring for our community members who have spent their time sharing information with us.
Councilmember King?
I had two categories for questions, but both of them have been sort of addressed. I was looking at, you show categories like race and abilities, but you do have the ability to, if a certain project needs public transportation users or users of a certain service zones hold permits, we do treat that as different categories for co-design?
Correct.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. It's not, and the other one was just on the selection process. I think they're under the questions of sort of that protection that this isn't like an insider's game. And I think I really like to see the list of like trainers net, but it is networked, but it is also potential to have an insider view of that, and I think we want to protect from that. As far as the overall thing, again, I really like what's grown from the co-design process, this idea of like how to do engagement with the community. With something as big as like Unified Development Code, I watched this over a year and a half. It's very difficult to engage people early on because it's hard to know what impacts you or not. And I think things that are helping with that are good for our city. So again, I want to support it. The other comment I have with it, and again, I think this is a little bit of a loaded comment here, but calling it co-design makes it feel bigger than it is. And what you're really doing is outreach to the community. You're doing the same thing of like that engagement model where you show, whether people are, you know, uh, um, collaborating or, involved. But what we're trying to do is get more people engaged in that. By saying co-design, we seem to be handing over authority, and I don't get the impression we really are. So just the naming gets me a little caught up. But again, as far as the process, as far as a way of improving our engagement, I do support the program, and I hope we make strides with it.
Thank you. I'll let the mayor has
Yeah, I'll let the mayor quickly respond to that.
Thank you, and I just want to really push back, but to respond to what you said. Co-design is purposeful and it doesn't happen accidentally. It isn't an insider's game. They reach out to people in the community and get contacts and who do you know that might be able to do this? And it's like a spider web, and I love that little picture where it has one person with the many, because those many could be the next co-designer, should they fit the demographic of what they're looking for at the time. And I guess I just, I'm going to be really careful, and I already have been, in our use of the term co-design. Co-design is something specific that we've developed. It's not just willy-nilly. It's not just we've reached out to a Black person or we've reached out to a Somali person. That's not what it is. It's much more planful and purposeful. There's training. There's a process involved. And I'm going to be really strict about saying we don't use the term co-design unless we're actually using, in this little book, the co-design process, because it dilutes something that has been remarkable. It has been, I've spoken and I know others have spoken around the country about this process, and people want to understand that it's different than what they currently do. And unless we keep it pure, that co-design is what co-design is, and we follow the guidelines, pretty soon it loses its importance of filling those gaps of underrepresented voices in our community. So I just want, I think it's worth pointing out, I hope they don't mind, but Chow was one of our early co-designers. Wafa was one of our co-designers. And we've been fortunate in that some of these people who are identified as wonderfully talented and beneficial to our community have been able to utilize to the benefit of our community in different ways. But they are no longer co-designers now. They help, they understand in their hearts and minds the process because they were one of them in the beginning. And so I just want to say, to me it is very different, and I hope we continue to treat it very different so we don't lose the quality and the really important process that we have in place.
Respond to any Councilmember King, otherwise we'll move on.
respond to? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you.
We had a nice conversation this afternoon, and a couple of things that you said, and you repeated up here, is that it's not one person listening to the notes and writing their interpretation, but it's the group that's listening to it and comes up with that interpretation of what's being said. So I like that, and kind of go back to what the mayor is saying, it's the opposite of the insider game, it's the outsider game. So if somebody knows me, they're not really gonna be asked to be on your group, so I get that, and I like that, I think that's good. I think there's a mixture, I do. There's a mixture though, when we're using public funds and not having public names, and I'm sorry that it happened, that the photos were abused, and so I think that's a typo that we need to watch, and I'm with you on that. We talked about, you said, well, go to the DMC webpage, and believe it or not, I don't do that, so I would think that city Rochester project should be on the city of Rochester, and I think that having that in there would be very helpful, so people can go and find that right in the Rochester site. And then we talked about Parks Department, and we said, geez, they're using co-design for Soldiers Field and Silver Lake, and you said
Co-design concepts,
concept.
not the entire process. So that is something we need to clarify even internally with our city teammates to make sure, the many concepts you got the toolkit, right? The many concepts in there that are very valuable. And to the mayor's point, if we are not adhering to the integrity of that process, then we're pulling co-design concepts versus other times where we say we're actually utilizing the co-design process. So that is something that we will work on, make sure that we're clarifying.
So since we're concerned with the city of Rochester, what Rochester projects have actually used co-design, not PMC projects in Rochester, but just plain simply Rochester projects?
Let me go back to my slides, Councilor Palmer. And I would say, Discovery Walk, I know it's DNC funded, so I would think that would be one. The Belong to This Man's Challenge one is one that utilized in what was a grant program. The Sixth Street Bridge project utilized co-design.
And are all these on the DMC website?
What five attached to you? Are they on the DNC website? Yes. Those are not. Okay.
So what I just took from that is that Sixth Street Bridge and Riverfront Reimagined are the two only city-only projects that we done co-design.
And
The others are co-design light.
I was going to say, and bus rapid transit station, I believe that was a full time. So I'll compile those and get them to you, but also get them shared on.
You don't send them to me, put them on the website so the public
Yeah.
can see it. I mean, I think that's important for people to be able to figure out what we're doing because, it's the city of Rochester.
Absolutely, thank you.
Councilmember Dennis.
Okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate you meeting with many of us earlier to answer questions. I also watched, Jo Marie, your presentation when you did the equity series just last week, and that was wonderful. I think, power and influence has been a huge deciding factor on many decisions in government, so it's refreshing to see gathering perspectives from diverse and many different areas of life. I think removing barriers and discovering what barriers there are and limiting those and is important. So I like the idea. I would almost say love the idea of the co-designer process in theory and on paper, and it's wonderful. But I think the implementation of it uses a little bit of issues with trust. And I think when the citizens see things that aren't being recorded, that aren't being documented in the way other government means are, it creates a little bit of lack of transparency in people's view, accountability. And like was mentioned, when public funds are being used and there is no records or no checks and balances or oversight, it's hard to keep that trust that, I trust you, you're amazing, and the co-design team, and I know a lot of people on the facilitator lineup, but I feel like having it documented in some way, and it doesn't have to necessarily be, I know there's there was a study session that I asked a lot of questions on why isn't it being recorded? Why isn't it being, documented like these meetings are? And there was a lot of reasons given, intimidation and what you have mentioned. But I feel it protects the co-designers too. I know from lived experience that when someone says something that's false, you can go back and look on the video and say, no, I never said this in the council meeting, even though it was said to private investigators. So you can actually go back and protect yourself because it was recorded. And I feel that this.
Can you keep it focused on co-design?
I meant I about the same time as everyone. Thank you. But I feel that this protects, and I know it protects me from the censure, and it protects, I think, would protect other people from things that, like, if someone said a co-designer said this or this was done, if there's no record of it, like not even audio or and I think it's an issue for that as well, not just for transparency and accountability and oversight for the funding of the program, but also protection of the co-designers themselves. So why isn't it recorded at all? Even if it's not released to the public, why isn't it recorded in audio, visual, something that at least is there to protect the co-designers?
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Dennis, and I can answer, and then Rafa and Jess, feel free to add anything that I'm missing. A lot of times when we're picking co-designers, like I mentioned, we're looking for folks from very impacted communities who are not responding to our surveys, who don't come to focus groups or working groups, who may not have really great or trusted relationships with this government or maybe a government in a different space that they came from, right, etc. And so we're also asking them to share a lot of vulnerability and personal stories and perspectives, right, in that space. And there's a level of maintaining that trust that we're trying to do. And so we don't ever intend to record the co-design sessions because I do think that it would take away from the element of that trusted space that we are creating. Beyond that, being on video and having to share, my neighbor or my sister or whoever that was in that network shared these very personal things with me, and this is how it impacts the livelihood within this community. That's not something that we would want to record. What we really want from co-design is to extract themes from the information that they're sharing. And that's the important part. So that's the part that we record in that summary report that is shared. But their own personal stories and the personal stories of the people that they are talking with, that part of it we don't want to include in a recording.
Well, I see that. I know that from throughout history, things have been lost in translation when you have someone else recording something. I feel, and I mentioned this, I think it's important to have it recorded, even if it was very, like we are recording this, we're going to keep it in a vault just in case there's like some issue. But I feel it's important for this accountability, all of the things I mentioned, to have it recorded to protect the taxpayers and the people who have public funds as well as the co-designers.
Councilmember Palmer?
And I had asked that question, but for me, I was very comfortable with your answer that many people are taking these notes from the designers. And it's not one person doing their describing of it. So I'm very comfortable in not being recorded. I understand where it's more comfortable and more free flowing for people not to have that. And I think it would cumbersome to do it. So I'm very comfortable with how that is for privacy and also for public good. So thank you for clarifying that with me.
Thank you.
We need to move on. This has been a great discussion. Thank you so much, Ms. Motella, Ms. Morris, others, for being here and preparing this great presentation. We have another important topic and a little